The NBL season is about to start, so let's dive into the Australian League's brightest prospects ahead of the 2024 NBA Draft. Trentyn Flowers is the next star with the most buzz. A former 5-star commit for Louisville, Flowers instead chose to join the Adelaide 36ers to develop as a point guard. He got off to a rocky start in NBL Blitz action. It was a steep, early learning curve for Flowers, who accumulated avoidable turnover after avoidable turnover. This was his first time playing against pros, and he was being guarded at the point of attack like never before. And while all of these turnovers that we're seeing right now are ugly, I'm still relatively high on Flowers. It seems like the 36ers are moving away from him being strictly a point guard, but at the end of the day, he still profiles as a wing-sized ball handler at around 6'8", 6'9", with some passing instincts and uses both on and off the ball. I have Flowers in my preseason top 30, and if everyone remains patient with his development, I think he's going to see huge improvement this season. In fact, there was already some game-on-game improvement just this week. When Flowers is not handling the ball, which seems like it will happen more, he's usually on the wing as quote-unquote the fifth man on the court or in the corner. But he doesn't just stand pouting around. Flowers is an active cutter who understands when to attack the paint when his defender turns his head or loses focus. The Adelaide prospect is also a willing spot-up shooter. His release point goes a little too far back right now, but the ball comes cleanly out of his hands and he has touch out to the three-point line. Going forward, I expect Flowers to largely be used as a grab-and-go threat out of defensive rebounds. That way, defenders cannot harass him as much while he still develops his handle and awareness. But I'll be keeping a close eye on his evolution playing in traffic. The former 5-star is incredibly skinny right now, and he still has trouble finishing at the rim. German big man ARIEL HUKPORTI was a next star 2 seasons ago before missing all of last year with an Achilles tendon injury. He's back now, and at this stage, he is firmly in my second round. Standing at 7 feet, the 21-year-old is very much a center, and he fulfills the basics of his position really well. HUKPORTI has an easy plug-and-play role at any level as an explosive big who can play in the pick and roll and finish at the rim. Right now, HUKPORTI mostly dives long and then dunks or maybe flips in a hook shot. He's an efficient catch-and-finish guy, and he does this very well, but I'm curious to see how he develops in the short roll. A floater, another type of touch shot, or a short jumper would be interesting for him, as would any additional playmaking for others. Besides playing out of screens, HUKPORTI can also crash the boards and secure second-chance opportunities with offensive rebounds. He's still recovering all of his explosiveness after returning from that Achilles injury, but he should get plenty of time with Melbourne United to fully recover his springs. Then, HUKPORTI is also a hard worker and a very solid north-to-south athlete. He runs from rim to rim harder than most bigs who defend him, and that way he can pick up easy points just getting from one end of the court to the other. Offensively, showing any signs of self-creation would be a big boost to his draft stock. HUKPORTI has been working on this fadeaway that we saw him bust out a few times, but it's not going into the basket, and it doesn't look that natural for him yet. On defense, we're looking at a big who's mostly only going to play in drop coverage. The German center can make himself big against ball handlers, but I think that he's still inconsistent at taking away angles and passes to the roller. I'm optimistic here, but I will want to see him rev up his defensive production. AJ Johnson has had a tough start to his NBL career with the Illawarra Hawks, sustaining a broken nose that required surgery, and then not showing much in NBL Blitz action. We profiled Johnson before on Floor and Ceiling when he was at Donda Academy, and he's still someone to watch. The California guard is shifty, athletic, and a fearless shooter. He's also a solid decision maker as a passer, which we saw flashes of this past week in the pick and roll. However, the 18-year-old has been described to me as a really young 18, in that his body, which is very skinny, still needs tons of development. Johnson is explosive, but he lacks functional strength right now, which in turn does not let him get to his spots on the court against more seasoned and physically developed players. Of course, playing with a broken nose is a tough first outing for anyone, so we have to remain patient with Johnson. But it will be a process with him, and it might take a bit of time for AJ to get fully comfortable on the court for multiple reasons. On that note though, it is worth mentioning that Johnson looked better in his third game of blitz action, playing without a face mask. AJ Johnson's teammate Lachlan Olbrich broke out in a significant way at the NBL Blitz. Olbrich won Big West Freshman of the Year during his only college season at UC Riverside last year. Now he's a full-blown pro with the Hawks, and it looks like he is quickly going to be an important part of their rotation. The 6'10" forward was a really pleasant surprise. Olbrich's sense of on-court maturity was clear throughout all of his minutes. He basically never made a bad, sloppy, or rushed decision. On offense, he was a highly capable ball handler. Olbrich moved fluidly around the floor at his size, and he showed a relatively tight handle that he used to create both for himself and others. Olbrich was easily running handoffs and dribble handoffs, and he was being used by Illawarra as the trigger man to get into actions. Time and time again, we saw how his playmaking for others was useful, mostly when he was in transition and seeing over the top of defenses. Like ARIEL HUKPORTI, Olbrich can also play out of screens, although the Australian big showed some more dexterity creating for others on short rolls, and he even flashed a floater that can be used to good advantage. On top of that, the former UC Riverside big also showed that he can perform the basics expected from his position. That means rim running and finishing plays, catching and scoring with his soft hands around the basket, and securing offensive rebounds. If Olbrich demonstrates that he also has a three-pointer to go along with all of this, I see no reason why he shouldn't be considered a very real draft prospect this season or in the short term. On the other side of the ball, Olbrich was similarly reliable and sturdy on defense. He's not an incredible run and jump athlete, but he's coordinated, mobile, and most of all, strong. Bigs were not able to get into his chest and move him. He was solid down low, and then also clever with how he positioned himself in the pick and roll to be disruptive. The Aussie forward established himself on my radar big time, and this season will be a great opportunity to get the attention of NBA decision makers who will be watching to keep tabs on AJ Johnson. Another Australian prospect who has a clear role in his team's rotation is Alex TOOHEY. TOOHEY was originally set to attend Gonzaga before he committed to the NBL's Next Stars program under the Sydney Kings. The 6'7" sharpshooter has strong positional size at the wing, or even at the two, and he has a skill set that will earn him plenty of playing time as a rookie this season. Right now, TOOHEY's game is centered around his three-point shooting. The Aussie has really developed this part of his game, and he's a dependable floor spacer who stays ready to shoot, and then has a quick, compact stroke with range. This alone should take him far in the NBL. It would have in college at Gonzaga, and it will in the future if he makes a step up to the next level. However, and importantly, TOOHEY is not just a shooter. He can move off the ball in ways that go beyond spotting up or catching and shooting. The Sydney Kings wing is a shrewd cutter who moves towards the basket with real intent. And he's not that dynamic of an athlete, but TOOHEY's frame has filled out well, and he has real touch. Looking ahead though, he still needs to become more comfortable finishing at the rim and playing in traffic, especially when he goes left. As I said, he's more so big and coordinated rather than explosive, so TOOHEY can still struggle for consistency in short spaces. He's had some encouraging flashes, but there's still plenty to build on. Taran Armstrong, another Australian prospect who spent time in the US at California Baptist, is one of the best passing prospects in the world. Armstrong is strictly a point guard, and he guarantees you an array of awesome reads every time he's on the floor. The 21-year-old sees events happen before others do, he's creative with his passes and accurate with his deliveries. He can play in the pick and roll, in transition, and he's understanding how to control the tempo of a game better and better. Armstrong spent his last 2 years in college, but like Lachlan Olbrich, he's now a pro in the NBL with real Rookie of the Year potential. But for all of Armstrong's playmaking and facilitating for others, the real problem is that he cannot create much for himself. Right now, and in limited minutes, Taran is a smart enough player to create advantages for others. He's poised, playing out of screens, and he can even be used as a screener himself. But at the end of the day, these lanes and windows will eventually close for him if he cannot figure out a way to put the ball in the hoop. Armstrong is a fairly hesitant scorer, and he's very much a pass-first player to just about every extent. So, given his decent size at 6'5" and the muscle that he's added to his frame, I would really like to see him develop some sort of runner or floater. And then, the Australian point guard will also have to shoot a lot more from 3, particularly spotting up. In college, Armstrong made 53 of his 173s for a little under 31%, so he'll need at least that, but ideally better with the Taipans. Bobi Klintman made the move from Wake Forest to the NBL this offseason, and tracking him is going to be intriguing. We looked at Klintman in depth ahead of the 2023 draft, and his strengths and improvement points remain pretty similar. On one hand, he has the potential to be a mismatch as a huge 6'10" wing with broad shoulders who can finish around the rim and then also facilitate a little bit for others. However, he was at his best when his role was simplified and all the Swedish prospect had to do was cut, catch, and finish in or around the paint. Obviously, Klintman can do this, but it puts a cap on his potential. And the hope is that he can use this season in Australia to go from possible first rounder to surefire lottery pick. So in order to do that, Klintman's jumper might be his swing skill. It was encouraging that Klintman looked more comfortable both spotting up, but primarily pulling up off the dribble. He made a couple of nice shots in his 3 blitz games, but overall, he remains very inconsistent with his jump shots. Most of all though, what I don't want to see is him leaving bunnies on the table at the rim. Even though he's 6'10" and strong, Klintman still shies away from contact. He has trouble finishing over length, and in his first few NBL games, even if this is preseason, he was rushing his finishing in a noticeable way. Right now, Klintman's skill set is still more theoretical than it is real, but he has an entire season to iron out his improvement points and become the walking mismatch that he can be. Center of Excellence alum Ben Henshall has gotten plenty of shine this preseason, first versus the G League Ignite with the Perth Wildcats, and now in the NBL Blitz. What I love the most about the Australian guard is how herky-jerky he is when it comes to getting to his spots and finishing. Henshall doesn't have supreme athletic gifts, but he has some real shake to his game. He can stop and start on his drives, he decelerates when he sees the defense coming at him to draw fouls, and overall, he is a really clever player. At lower levels, Henshall showed some real flashes creating his own pull-up as well. He can operate out of step backs and side steps off the bounce, and also inflict damage on defenses out of screens. However, as he settles into his first year as a pro with Perth, it will be interesting to see the type of shot diet that Henshall gets. Most likely, he will have to become more of a spot-up shooter and off-the-ball player in the short term. Much like Lachlan Olbrich, Henshall will have NBA decision-makers watching Alex Sarr on his team, so this season is a great chance to establish himself on draft radars, either for now or beyond. The Australian prospect is going to be 19 until next June, so he still has plenty of draft eligibility.